welcome to the fifth episode of Major Fundcast, our Whitley Penn Talks Public Sector podcast. My name is Lupe Garcia. I'm one of the partners in the public sector practice, and with us today we have David Webb and Celina. I'll let them introduce themselves.
And I'm Celina Cereceres, another public sector partner in the Houston office for Whitley Penn.
Hi, I'm David Webb with Stifel Nicolas here in the Houston office.
And so David's actually our first repeat guest and contributor, and I'm really excited about the leadership podcast we're going to have today because I've heard David present on this topic in the past, and the audience loved his material and the stories that went along with it. And the points he makes, I think, are really universal and that they apply to every industry, every office setting. And I think everyone that listens to this is really going to get a lot out of this list. And David, I know your presentation is more comprehensive than what we're going to cover today. I think it's upwards of 35 points that you normally have in your leadership presentation, but you boiled it down to your top 10 leadership points of being an effective team member. And so we'll go ahead and get started with the first one. And the first one you label, you get what you give. And what do you mean by that?
Yes. So many times in my career, I've had employees say, I want respect, I want recognition, I want this, I want that. And what I've told them, not always to their satisfaction, is you get what you give. If you want respect, you have to respect others. If you want recognition, you've got to recognize what others are doing. You give that, and people will return that to you. That's in the Bible. Dr. Phil says that. Not everybody likes Dr. Phil, but I like Dr. Phil. And you know, it just rings true when you think about that saying, that you will get what you give to others. And it's not so easy to do. It takes a little practice, but if you give respect, if you give admiration, if you give recognition to others, they will eventually return that to you. That's important to know when you're working as a team member in any kind of group project or a group environment, that's just part of working cooperatively and positively with others.
And I think if you don't have an attitude every day when you come to work, I want to learn something new either about myself or my team members, you lose out every day. Sometimes, you may not want to get out of bed, but when you actually show up, you realize, my gosh, if I hadn't gone to that meeting, I would have not learned about XYZ, or I would have missed out on an opportunity. So I think if you wake up every day saying, okay, what can I teach others and what can I learn from others, I think your day will go a lot better.
Absolutely.
But David, I'm a stickler for being on time. I'm always early. Actually, Lupe kind of gets irritated when we have to travel together because I want to be there at the designated 2 hours before my plane takes off, and he's kind of the type, we're going to run onto the plane as it's taking off, and that stresses me out. So we're a little bit different in that. So can you tell us a little bit about your thought process around 15 minutes early is on time?
I have always been the early bird. Also, I get to the airport ridiculously early almost every single time because I know that traffic sometimes will delay you, or there'll be a big crowd to go through security or whatever, and it almost never happens to me, so I'm always there ridiculously early. But I've worked with people who they'll be the last one on the plane because they just got here, and that's fine too as long as you make the plane. What I've told people before, and what I think makes you a productive team member, is to think in terms of 15 minutes early is on time. If you have a meeting at 8 o'clock, get there 15 minutes early so that you can put your stuff away, go get your coffee, say good morning to a few people, and then still be on time for your meeting. If you're walking in the door and swiping your security card right at 8 o'clock and everyone's sitting in the conference room waiting on you, then you're late. And that's inconsiderate of other people, and it's lazy on your part. So 15 minutes, and I've heard that before from many and various speakers, 15 minutes early is on time, and I think it's true.
I played in a softball league, and the coach, I heard a version of this. He would tell because we practice early on a Saturday morning, and so it would really irritate him if someone showed up late and considered of everyone else that got there on time. Mm-hmm. So he would say, if you're early, you're on time, and if you're on time, you're late, and if you're late, you're in trouble.
Well, and even something like softball practice on Saturday morning. If you're going to be on the team, show up for practice.
Right.
If you can't show up on time, if you can't get to a game on time, you're offending and impinging on everybody else. It never hurts to be early. Sometimes it does impair you to be late. So I've always been an early bird. As long as I can remember, I've always shown up. My father-in-law is much different. He's much more early. He's the type that will be at the airport 4 hours early, which is ridiculous. But
Yes.
And when you think about first impressions, punctuality is one of those that people notice right off the bat all the time. And if I think back over the years of people that just haven't worked out, punctuality was always one of the issues that they had. They just struggled to be places where they were supposed to be on time.
well, these days you have cell phones. When I was a kid, if you were running late for baseball practice or school or whatever, you were just late, and then you had to explain to somebody why you were late. These days, everybody's got a cell phone. If you're running late, call ahead. Just say, "Hey, I'm stuck in traffic. Couldn't get out of the house. Whatever. At least let them know." And most people, I think, appreciate that.
Point number 3, you were hired for your people skills, not your technical skills. So I love this one because when we present to students at campus, on campus, accounting students, they're always really surprised to hear that, accounting is really a people-oriented profession. There's a lot of communication, face-to-face communication that takes place. We're not just behind a computer working in Excel all day. So they're sometimes surprised about the people skills, the interpersonal skills that are necessary to do what we do, and this applies to all professions, not just professional services.
It really does. That really is universally applicable to virtually every business segment. It's all about people skills and interacting professionally and collegially with others. I did a lot of research on this one, and I was looking at the traits of a great boss and the traits of a great employee. And there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet about that. And if you start compiling all the different lists, the top 10, the top 20 lists, you'll start to see some overlap pretty quickly. And I was surprised to see, if you look at the traits of a good boss, the traits of a good employee, they're very similar. They're mostly character driven. Honesty, willingness to motivate others, maturity, being trustworthy, giving honest feedback, caring about people, being self-aware, having a positive attitude. Those are all personality traits. That has nothing to do with whether you understand depreciation or generally accepted accounting principles. All those technical skills, your degree, your experience, your capabilities, that gets you in the door for an interview. But what will get the job and keep the job are people skills. Can you interact effectively with a supervisor? Can you interact effectively and collegially with the people that you are working with? The one thing that I didn't see on either of these lists, and all the lists that I compiled and boiled down to here, was anything about decisiveness, or maybe more simply put, just simple courage. That nothing out there anywhere on any of those lists about being decisive, being courageous. As a CFO in school business, there were a lot of times when I felt like I was out there on an island and I had to make a decision about something, either business related or employee related, and it was entirely up to me. And I took the information that I had and I made a decision, and most of the time it was the right one. Sometimes it didn't work out so well, but I at least was, I think, somewhat decisive. I've seen a lot of other people in school business and other segments of business who are, they're not decisive, but they're in a position where they're required to be, and they just don't do it. And I can't help but think maybe they're in the wrong position. Maybe they need more training. Maybe they just need a little courage of their convictions. But I did not see that one anywhere on the list. And that was equally surprising. But I think the point here is most of the traits that people think of when they think what makes a good boss, what makes a good employee, what makes a good team member, it's all about personality and how you interact with the team. It's not about your technical skills.
I think when we speak to students, but also when I interview candidates, I always tell them I can teach you technical skills all day long for the rest of your career, as long as you want to be here. But I can't teach you your work ethic. I can't give you that. That has to come from within you, and you have to look within yourself to figure out, do I have what it takes to serve others and to provide, I guess, to grow myself. If you can't do that, you're not willing to invest that, I can't give you that. That has to come from you. And then on the decisive point, I mean, it is tough when you're in a leadership position and you make these decisions, whether good or bad. You have to own it and then I guess, weigh the pros and cons of your decision and be okay with it. I know that these are the things that could go wrong, and I have to be okay with that. But if I don't make this decision, then XYZ is not going to get done. And so you have to be comfortable with that. And I think that took me a long time, especially when I became partner, saying I'm going to have to make decisions that, my goodness, it could affect my career, it could affect others, but you have to do it. And as long, I think, as you're doing it in good faith, you're not doing anything illegal, you're doing it based on research, you're going to be okay.
You have to be decisive. Making a decision may have consequences one way or the other. Not making a decision is going to have consequences one way or the other. So you're going to have consequences. You might as well be decisive and try to move you, your team, your organization forward.
Well, I love clothes, David. During the shutdown, I was telling Lupe just yesterday, I didn't care if I was at home. I was going to do my makeup, I was going to do my hair, I was going to dress up in a suit, even if I'm just, at home, but it made me feel better. And if I didn't do that, it totally affected my attitude. If I had bedhead and was in pajamas, it was going to affect the rest of my day.
The dress code absolutely matters. I think people should take it very seriously. In this age of working from home, either some of the time or all of the time, I have encouraged some of my coworkers, get up, take your shower, shave, put on clean clothes, not the same thing you had on all day yesterday. Look presentable, and more as COVID-19 goes on, we're doing more and more Zoom calls. So we are face to face with some of our clients. It's actually working out pretty well for us in our business and saving us a lot of travel expense if we can just get on a Zoom call with them and be face to face that way. But you can't be sitting there in your bunny slippers and your pajamas if you're face to face with them on the computer screen. You've got to look at least presentable. Nowadays, I meet a lot of people in their office and they're in khakis or jeans and a golf shirt with one of their high school logos on it, and that's fine. If that's allowable by their dress code, if that's encouraged, that's great. We need to look at least that dressed up, if not more so, when we're on a Zoom call with them, because appearance does matter. It absolutely does. Y'all are out seeing clients at their office location. I think y'all should be as dressed up, if not more so, just to project a professional image. I've told employees before, when we had a dress code in the school district that was probably pretty liberal. You can wear whatever you want to wear as long as it's in compliance with this very liberal dress code. I would suggest you not look like you just got done doing 3 hours of gardening. The dress code does not say your clothes have to be clean. It presumes it. I want you to look presentable and professional, even in a relaxed office environment. So most of the time, especially for those who are dress code challenged, I will tell them, when in doubt, overdress. Let's go an extra mile here, or maybe just an extra quarter of a mile, and let's clear the bar by more than just a little bit.
And I think mentally it just makes you feel better too. You feel more confident. But if you know you're wearing yesterday's clothes and you know
Then you know.
you know it's going to affect you. So wash your hair. Do all of that.
One of our senior managers, he always makes a great point when we do have some of these types of issues with employees. He says, you have to remember, we're getting these people straight from their mamas sometimes, so there is some training involved in these areas, and just know that comes with the territory.
Well, and that's true for all of us who have been in the work world for a while, is we forget what we were like when we first came out of school. There's just a lot of basics that we have learned and take for granted that some of these kids fresh out of college or out of high school don't know. And sometimes you just got to take them to lunch and get out of the office and sit down with them and say, here's the bottom line, dress code, behavior, being on time. Right. You have to, they don't know unless someone tells them. So sometimes having that little heart-to-heart is important and beneficial for them.
Point number 5 of being an effective team member, you have here, be honest about what you can do and to own your mistakes. Why is that important, David?
That's important in any team environment, to be honest about what you're able to do. Many a times I've given someone something to do and they came back 15 minutes later and said, okay, I got started, and then I realized I don't have a clue what it is you're trying to do here or what it is you want. And I will tell them there's no such thing as a stupid question. That's great. Let me back up and give you some background on what we're trying to accomplish, and maybe that puts what I'm asking you to do into context, so what you're doing makes more sense. Or let me spell out more specifically what it is I want you to do here, and I appreciate that. If someone comes to me and says, okay, I was going to put this Excel spreadsheet together for you the way you wanted, but I don't know anything about Excel. What's Excel? Okay, good. Now I'm going to have to back up a little farther and teach you some Excel, but trust me, you'll catch on quickly. It's not that hard. You just have to be honest about what you can do and what you can't do. And when you make a mistake, you made it. I'm probably going to figure out you made it. Just own it. Just own it, and we'll fix it and we'll move on. It's not about blame. It's about getting to the finish line of whatever project that we're working on. And that's easy to say, but that's really hard, especially if you've made a really big mistake. And I have made 1 or 2 of those before, where I had to go to my superintendent and say, you're going to love this one. Big mistake. There's really no way to fix it at this point. We're just going to have to live with it. That's hard. That's hard for anyone to go to their boss and admit to. But it's better to get it over with, because if you made a big mistake, odds are we're all going to figure it out at some point. I'd rather figure it out sooner rather than later. And if it's something that we just have to live with, then we just live with it. But at least we know.
But at least sometimes, David, you think it's something that's irreparable, but it really isn't. Sometimes.
It might not be.
Once you verbalize it, someone says, oh, that I've already gone through that. Let me tell you how we fix it. So you internalize it. You don't tell anybody. And then it's worse when you're found out and that you were hiding it. It's worse because I know that's one of my things. People always say, why are you always telling on yourself? Because it's worse if someone finds out.
It's worse if you wait.
Yeah,
yes.
If you're doing that.
It really is.
But so if you practice these things as an employee, I think it translates well when you start interacting and you're trying to attract and retain clients. I think they appreciate that as well. If you take ownership, for example, okay, we're financial statement auditors, so it's easy for us to say, these are your financial statements. But if we take ownership and we know, yes, we're issuing an opinion, but I want to partner with you in issuing these financial statements. Let's get it right together. And if I make a mistake, I'm going to tell you, I made a mistake, but let me fix it for you. And that's the important thing. Let me fix it once we all acknowledge the issue.
Yeah, it's easy to sit here and reminisce about some of those mistakes we've made in the past and think about some that we might have just dodged but barely. It's a lot harder when you're in the middle of a situation to raise your hand and say, sorry guys, I screwed up here. Now help me fix it. That's tough. That is hard for anyone. I don't care how confident or how accomplished you are in your business. That's a hard one. Typically, you go home at the end of the day, you feel better about it, and the team can pitch in and help you out. Maybe not, but at least you got it off your chest, and you probably feel better about the situation. And it's just the right thing to do.
But if you build these strong relationships with your employees and your team members, when you're in a pickle like this, they're going to be the first to help you. But if you don't have all of these other traits, they're not going to follow you or help you. They're going to say, you're on your own. You treat us like dirt. You know, the relationship we have is broken.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not going to help you.
Yeah, you get what you give.
Yep,
Number one.
exactly.
You treat people like dirt. Yeah, when you make a mistake, they're going to sell you down the river. And you would deserve it.
Yes.
So,
one of the partners here at the firm, he makes the point of, you know, to make sure people understand what they're assigned to do and what their task is. He's like, okay, we've gone through the plan. This is what everyone's assignments are. Now repeat back to me in your own words what you think it is that you're responsible for and how you're going to get that done.
That's a good one. I like
And so
that.
if they can't verbalize it, you know they don't understand. And so you're like, okay, like you said, okay, let's go back to step one.
This is a debit.
Mhm.
And this is a credit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's hard for people to be honest or to speak up and say, I don't know exactly what you're
What's
asking me to
happening
do,
here.
right? So you kind of have to pull it out of them or ask them differently to kind of gauge whether or not they truly understand.
Okay, so point 7 is get to the point and stick to it.
Everyone is busy these days. Technology has helped us solve a lot of work-related problems and be more productive, but everyone is so much busier now than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. If you've got something to say, if you've got a question to ask of a team leader or a team member, get to the point, stick to it. Sometimes think it out before you go into somebody's office to say, hey, we've got an issue or we've got a problem here. And I would say also, if it's a problem, don't just put the monkey on somebody else's back. Don't walk in and say, here's a problem. Whew, I feel better for getting that off my back. Good luck with that, and walk away. Think of solutions too. Come in and say, boss, I've got a problem. Here's is, and here's a couple of different things I've thought of that we could do to solve it. You may have some other ideas, or you may have been through this before, but it's new to me. But get to the point. Get to the point, stick to the point, and present your solutions if you have any, but don't waste people's time. Don't go off on tangents. Where I see people have problems with this a lot of times is with relationships inside a group of people working together. They may be having trouble getting something accomplished, and they may be running into different issues, and the next thing you know, you're hearing things like, I just can't work with this person. Well, that's not going to work. Right now, maybe later on down the road, we can reorganize in a way where you don't have to. But right now, yes, you're going to have to work with that person. Don't let it dissolve or devolve into personal issues. Don't get off task. Stay on your task. Stick to it. Move along.
I love your next point, David. Put your phone away. I think we've all been in situations or known someone that just can't put the phone down and just has to constantly be checking their email or their text messages or their social media feed, and it just really hinders their ability to communicate with others and just get their work done because they can't seem to put the phone down.
All of our technology devices, our iPads, our phones that do so many things besides work as a phone, are really great tools. I mean, I wish we'd had some of this stuff earlier in my career. I would have been much more efficient. I am amazed at how so many people have gotten overly addicted to their cell phones. to the point where they can't go into a meeting, they can't go out to dinner with their friends and just put the phone down. Now, you want to do that to your friends out at dinner and have them all go home and grumble about, well, he or she was there, but they were on their phone the whole time and chuckling at things they looked at on Facebook instead of interacting with us. That's fine. In a work setting, especially in a group meeting, if you've got everybody in the conference room, you're having a little powwow about where we are and where we're going to go, you've got to put the phone down. You've got to turn it off or turn it on vibrate, put it in your pocket. You can't be sitting there looking at your phone while your team leader is talking about the project that you have at hand. It's not going to kill you. You won't die from it. Just put it away for a little while. And if you have to leave it out because you're expecting a call from your kid's doctor or something really legitimately important, then at least put it face down.
Or tell your team members or the individuals you're with in the meeting. And I usually do that. Oh, they'll say, Celina, do you know if TEA will allow us to do this? I said, well, let me text somebody. I said, while we're talking, I'll be texting, and I should get an answer while we're in the meeting. But that way they know I'm not texting my friends or my mom or my dad or my siblings. I'm doing this right now. Or if I'm typing and they're talking, I said, I'm emailing them right now, and while we're in this meeting, I'll get a response. But at least they know that. You give them a heads up, and I always do that. I'm not ignoring you. I'm texting that person. But I have been guilty of people coming to my office, and Lupe tells me, he's like, you think you're multitasking, but you're not. You don't even hear my question. And he'll say, what did I say?
Multitasking is one of the biggest fallacies of the 21st century. You can do two things at once. You just probably can't do either one of them very well.
That's what happens. I don't know what I typed over here, and I don't know what Lupe said. And he's like, you didn't hear anything that I said. So, yeah, it doesn't work. But Lupe is good about that. You walk into his office, he stops what he's doing. Body language is, I'm listening to you. And I know our administrative assistants have complained about me. Celina, you're always like doing two things. Lupe at least turns around and he looks at us and he stops what he's doing. You don't. I said, okay, I'll work on it. So they've told me that before.
And I think this goes back to earlier when we were talking about the dress code and being on time. Some people don't realize the perception they're giving by having the phone in their hand constantly, that the other person could feel put off by it, or you're not giving your full attention. You're dismissing them. You're not respecting, if they're speaking or talking or presenting, that you really aren't interested in what they have to say because you're more interested in what's on your screen in your hand.
Absolutely. Yeah, we kind of touched on this next one again earlier when we were talking about getting to the point, but don't bring up a problem until you have brainstormed some solutions. That seems like common sense, and I won't dwell on it because we already kind of talked about that. But so many times I personally have had employees who come in and just put the monkey literally on my back. Here, I got a problem. Boom. Now it's yours. Bye. Good luck with that. That's not how the world works. That's not how your personal relationships work. It's not how your work relationships work. If you've got a problem, you've got to think about some solutions. And if you need help implementing them or help coming up with better solutions, go to a coworker, go to a boss, go to a team member, and they just might have a better idea than you do. They might have a different perspective, but don't just go dump the problem on someone else and then walk away.
David, I was sitting in a board meeting, actually Spring ISD's board meeting Tuesday night, and they were honoring an assistant principal that had earned a state recognition, but her principal spoke on her behalf and said the exact same thing. This assistant principal is a problem solver. She comes to me with problems, but she already has her list of solutions and she just needs me to sign off on it, which is a breath of fresh air. The superintendent, Dr. Watson, stepped in and said, I've heard her in leadership meetings and she's been part of different committees. Mm-hmm. And he said, this lady will be a leader, an administrator eventually. So it's not something that you made up.
That
David,
lady will be superintendent one day.
But it was very evident that that's what people are looking for in order to make you a leader, that you know how to problem solve, that you don't crumble You may emotionally crumble, I mean, internally crumble, right? You don't let others see it, but you have to come up with solutions. I tell my staff too, um, that come and ask me, Celina, what tips do you have for me as I'm moving up in my career? I said, it's all about the way you ask your questions. If you come to me and you just give me a task and say, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to start, okay, I'm going to be put off by that. Versus, Celina, I looked at prior year's files, I've done the research on the client, I've reviewed what you've told me to do, I've Googled all of these things, this is what I think it means, this is where I'm stuck. And if you tell me what it is you know and you don't know, I'm going to be more receptive to your issues, and I'm going to be more willing to help you.
Absolutely, it goes back to your people skills, how you deal collegially with the people you work with. If you come in and just say, "Well, here, boom," I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you want. Well, that comes across one way. If you come in and say, "Okay, I've looked at some previous year's examples and Googled it and whatever, and here's what I think. Tell me if I'm on the right course." Well, it just sounds a lot more friendly and cooperative and reasonable.
And you're interested in the project.
And sometimes what someone thinks is a problem or an issue isn't a problem or an issue after all. I know Chris has another analogy when someone brings them something like that with no solution, hasn't thought it out, but here I'm putting it on you to figure out. He says, okay, pretend you're me, you're standing at the podium at a board meeting, and you're presenting this to the board of trustees or the board of directors, and you're saying this is an issue. Tell me why it's an issue and what your recommendation is. And then the other person just gets quiet because then they realize, oh, yeah, no, I don't have any of that.
I will guarantee you from spending 26 years in front of my board of trustees that if you have a problem and you're going to present it to them in open session in front of the public, you better have some solutions in your back pocket, because that will be the first question they ask is, okay, thank you for presenting that problem. Now, what are you going to do about it? And you better have an answer for that one.
Your last point, David, learn to accept and process constructive criticism. That's really important, and we all encounter that in anything that we do. And some people really have a challenge or a tough time accepting constructive criticism and addressing it and using it in a positive way.
I saved the best for last here. That one's really hard. It's hard to accept constructive criticism because nobody likes to be criticized. Most of us have the impression that we're doing the best we can. And then when we get criticized for not doing better, well, that's personal, understandable. What we typically don't understand is whoever's giving us constructive criticism probably really doesn't want to be doing this. They would rather be praising us or not dealing with us at all. It's not fun to give constructive criticism to anybody, but sometimes you have to do it when you're a supervisor of people. So as one of the team members, you just have to learn, one, to accept it. It's going to happen. Nobody's perfect. You probably deserve some constructive criticism every now and then. And the second part, and that's the really hard one, is to process that information, internalize it, and develop some kind of plan for how you're going to do better next time. It's one thing to accept it and say, okay, I'm just not going to argue with you about this, so fine, be critical of me. It's another thing to say, okay, let me take that feedback and let me internalize it and let me do things differently so that I don't get the same criticism again. Learn from your mistakes and improve based on the criticism. Now, there's times when criticism's not justified. We've all had bosses who were overly critical for whatever reason, and not justified in their criticism, but that's generally the exception, not the rule. Nobody wants to be criticizing you, and when they do, you need to think about it and internalize it, and if you can incorporate it into a different behavior pattern to do better, you probably won't hear that criticism again. But it's hard to do.
How important would you say is it for the constructive criticism to be timely and supported by specific examples.
Well, yeah, it's got to be timely. If you sit down with an employee and say, yesterday we're in the meeting and you were on your phone the whole time and you were so negative when you did participate, you might want to think about putting the phone away and maybe being a little more cheerful and collegial and easier to work with than being Debbie Downer down there in the corner. Um, that's timely. That's valid criticism, and it's very timely. If you bring that up 6 months later in an annual review, well, then you probably just all suffered for 6 months for no good reason when you could have addressed nothing in an annual review 6 months later or 9 months later should be a surprise. It should all be stuff that we all know about and have probably discussed if there are issues to discuss. So it's got to be timely, or otherwise it loses its effectiveness, both for you and the person who's giving you that criticism. But again, that it's easy to sit here and say you need to accept it and internalize it. It's hard to do. Sometimes you got to go home and sit down with some friends and say, really, do I do this? Do I need to? Does it irritate you? Do I need to fix this? My dad used to say, your best friends won't tell you the truth, but David Webb will. I don't think he meant it as a compliment. But, I've had friends who say, really, do I do these things? And I would say, yes, you do. Yes, it's irritating. We still love you, but yeah, if you stop doing that, we might love you more.
And yes, it is conditional. My love for you is conditional.
I'll wrap this up by saying just sort of a little bonus tip here. There are times when bosses know things that they can't tell their employees. I don't have enough fingers and toes to count how many times my employees might have asked me a question about another employee or a certain situation, and I just had to say, I can't discuss that with you, either because of HIPAA concerns or just confidentiality. There are a lot of times when I can't. Yes, I know the answer to your question. I can't give you that answer right now. It's confidential. I can't discuss it for whatever reason. And sometimes bosses make decisions that you don't agree with, or you don't care one way or the other, but you just think it's the wrong decision. You have to understand, and you just have to take on faith. Sometimes they know something you don't.
Most of the time, they do. And I was telling Lupe this a few months ago that I struggle. It goes back to your point about being decisive. You have to be decisive because we have the whole story, but your employees don't have the whole story. And I remember our managing partner with our previous firm, Noel Larson, would always push on the manager saying, when you are in that leadership position, you're going to remember, why you criticized me, and maybe you shouldn't have criticized me because you don't know the whole story. So I think as an employee, you have to step back and say, I don't know the whole story. And so before I judge my employer, I should maybe ask, maybe there's things that they can't share with me, and say, and I usually will share as much as I can if I'm asked. I don't volunteer it, but I'll say, these are the things that you don't know, and you may be criticizing me as to why did you make that decision, and I have to be okay with that. But I know that I tried my best. I didn't do anything illegal, and I'm truly caring for the person I had to deal with or my employees, but I have to be okay with that and share as much as I can with the employees so that they understand. But I step back and I go back 20 years when I started my career and saying, man, I didn't know everything, and here I was judging my bosses. And there's a lot of pressure and decisions that have to be made. And you're not always the most popular person. And I know I've talked to other partners, and it's lonely at the top, in top leadership positions. It is lonely.
It is. Okay. And the flip side of this is, and I've told my employees on many occasions, is I don't know something unless you tell me. I don't sit here and just absorb the knowledge of the universe through osmosis. I may sit down and give you some criticism about something, and you may give me some feedback that's new to me. You may give me some information about why you were late, about why you were on your phone, about why you were negative or non-participatory in one of our group meetings or activities. And you can't just assume that I know that. I would tell my employees, I'm good, but I'm not psychic. I don't know unless you tell me. And the more you tell me, the better I am at dealing with you. So, yeah, when in doubt, you've got to come sit down, shut the door, tell me some things, because I don't just know them magically.
It boils down to communication. Having communication works both ways.
It does.
Yeah. Often and early.
Yes.
Preferably.
Perfectly.
Well, I think that wraps up our episode. David, these were all great points. I know they come from
Thank you.
Years of experience in leadership positions at the organizations you've been with. I think they're relatable. Everyone listening, I know, probably has thought of certain situations or individuals they've worked with currently or in the past that makes them think of some of these points. I think this is a great episode to share with people in your organization, colleagues, friends, because like we mentioned earlier, these points really address every organization, whether it's a professional or a church or school or personal. And I think everyone needs to take your point seriously and think about, what are they doing to either excel in these areas or, maybe identify what they can do to do a little better in all these areas. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and experience.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Yeah, enjoyed it.